Y'all, wait a second. I got to turn on a light. I realize that when it's that bright out, it makes the bedroom look like we're in shadow. So, oh, maybe not. Fiddling with my light. My name is Suzanne Tinkemeyer, if you don't know me. I used to write a column for a company called Pathos called No Longer Quivering. I wrote about the quiverful movement for over 10 years, along with a variety of things having to do with the whole evangelical world. If you could hit like, subscribe, that would be great. If not, that would be great too. These are just my opinions. Please don't bully anybody I'm about to talk about this morning because I'm definitely going to talk about some people. So I'm back. My asthma's eased enough where I'm back now finally a little bit. Um so yesterday it was kind of crazy. I went off and did the walk on the beach thing. Now I'm kind of a little bit not sunburned, but maybe a little bit pink. So I'm staying inside today like I'm a vampire who can't be out in the sun, with the exception of watering plants and hanging clothes out on the line. We're in the middle of dry season here in Costa Rica, so things dry in an instant. It's the craziest thing you've ever seen. It's like walking out into the Sahara. And I like it that way. Better than I like the humidity and the rain. So yesterday, I don't know who all saw it and who didn't. But yesterday, Gabby Petito's family released a photograph off of her cell phone. Pretty shocking. When I saw it, I almost started crying. The little girl had red and turning black all around her eye, across her nose and stuff. Her face was bloody. She took a picture of herself with her cell phone around the same time that the Moab, Utah police were called, where someone had witnessed Brian Laundrie um, attacking her. So she had documented her injuries on her cell phone before the cops ever showed up, or else right around the time. And what I find shocking about that is seeing the obvious physical injuries this child had. And I know everybody's say, oh, she's a grown woman. Well, that's true, but let me tell you something. She really was a young, innocent girl, not very old. And um, I kept looking at her and thinking about my daughter at that age, because my daughter at that age had the same desires to take a van trip across all these national parks, to go hiking, all the crap that I'm not interested in. But I was unhappy with the idea of my daughter taking a gap year to do these things because I didn't feel like she was mature enough to handle those kinds of situations. And that's what happened with Gabby. She went off and did those things. But it's proof that the Moab police had the evidence of domestic violence right in front of them, staring them in the face, and they ignored it. They ignored it to do this BS thing you sometimes see where they threaten the woman because she's more emotional with arrest and various things. And I watched that video of that poor child, and it just is heartbreaking to me. I cannot imagine. And I look at that and I think, if only the Moab police had actually enforced the laws in their jurisdiction, she might be alive. He might be alive. They may have separated and gone on their own ways. Even if it had been Gabby being arrested, she might be alive. She might have called her family and said, look, this has just gotten way too intense for me. Instead of doing the thing that we as women are taught to do, to stand by your man and forgive him for everything and make excuses for him galore when he's doing bad stuff. And I think that's kind of what happened here. She was just standing by her man, which is awful. At the same time, she was giving the cops, hey, he's beating me vibes, and they never picked up on it. So now her family is suing the police department for $50 million. And I hope they get every penny of it, because Domestic violence has to be taken seriously in the country. It just has to be. We can't keep making excuse for these guys that are doing this crap. You know, I was thinking about this. I was calling this morning the tale of two Gabbys because I'm talking about Gabby Petito to begin with. But at the same time, I'm watching my favorite guilty pleasure, Love After Lockup. And there's a Gabby on there who's got to be one of the most annoying, pain in the rear end people you ever want to lay eyes on. Except that her ex-con beat her severely. He beat her so severely, he fractured her orbital socket. This was an intense beating. And the thing is, I see all the time, I saw this yesterday on Twitter and on Reddit, people saying, so what if she had bruises and bumps? She admits she hit him. Well, the other Gabby didn't even hit the man who beat her like a drum. And even if you do slap somebody, that does not give them the right to tune you up like that. Violence is never the answer. And the U.S. has got to get a handle on this domestic violence issue. It has been something that has plagued the U.S. There are now laws in place in many places that deal with this, but the problem remains law enforcement. Law enforcement not enforcing the laws of the land that they're paid to do. I mean, the more I think about the Gabby Petito thing, the more I just want to strangle violence. Violence is not the way. The more I just want to say, what the heck is going on here? So I'm hoping that they manage to get some money out of the family, out of the law enforcement, and that law enforcement rethinks exactly how it is they're handling domestic violence, at least that part of the world. There's a lot of domestic violence that goes on in Utah. Statistics that used to cross my desk all the time suggested that in the more religious the area, the more domestic violence there was, and the less likely you were to be able to get anything legally done about it if you were the victim. Repressive religious areas tend to cover up for men that do that crap. I don't know. So the other thing I wanted to talk about this morning after I've ranted about domestic violence, because it's one of my bugaboos that I hate. Oh, and one last domestic violence tidbit. Do you know when you're most likely to get beaten by your intimate partner? When you're pregnant. It gives you a 1 in 4 chance of being the victim of domestic violence. I know it's crazy. The second thing I wanted to talk about this morning is the ongoing earthquakes in Turkey and Syria. It's not just a one-time event of the 7.8. They're having continual earthquakes of over a 4.0. I mean, every day since that time. Also, when you try to leave, oh, Java man, that is the most dangerous time if you're a victim of domestic violence. You have to put in a leaving plan, a solid one in place to get out. I've seen friends that have had to do this. I've seen it through work. You have to have a plan in place. It has to be pretty ironclad, because if not, that is the point that you're going to get then you may get you lose your life, actually. More times that happens when you're leaving than any other time. It must be earthquake season. Java man, it must be, except I'm going to tell you, I live in Costa Rica where we have earthquakes every single week. Fortunately, they're not very bad most of the time. They're 3.0 or less. And the big baddies seem to happen out in, what's the wrong direction? The Pacific Ocean. Pacific Ocean's that way, not that way. That's the Atlantic, of the Gulf of Mexico here. And it's kind of weird living in a place where it shakes a lot. Ring of fire, exactly. And there's all these faults. You can look on the maps and see where all the fault lines lay. So in Tamarindo, we're not exactly 100% on a fault line, but we're not far from it. And you get used to the little shakes. You have them on a regular, and it's like, okay, whatever. So I can hardly imagine what it's like living in Syria and Turkey, except for one thing I'm going to say. We had an earthquake in Virginia when I was living there that some put it at a 6.1 through about a 5.8. It shook all the way to DC. My husband felt it in the Postal Square building where he was working. I read one person in California has a San Andreas fault running through the backyard. I think I read about that same person. Ugh. And I remember when that happened, how shaken up I was, literally and figuratively. It was a scary, scary day, and that was a lot less intense than the one there that got there. But here was the horrible thing: is it shook for months afterwards. We got little tremors, 2 or 3 times a day sometimes, and the trauma came right back each time. You were just like shaking right away. Java Man, do you know where I was living at the time? I did not live in Orange. I lived in Culpeper, Virginia. I lived there. So I was very close to Orange. And part of the thing that scared the hell out of me about the Virginia one is the epicenter was very close to Louisa, where the nuclear power plant was. They got a pretty major shake at the plant, and I was freaking out over that. It condemned a pile of buildings in Culpeper. A lot of older structures had to come down. Our church, our large Methodist church, parts of it were condemned before it had to be rebuilt. It was pretty crazy. I'm at work, so we'll catch your reply. Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm slightly sunburned, so I can't put on a bra. I feel it. And so it's like I am going to wear my comfortable top and my cutoffs and just have a relaxed day. Um, exceeded the design limits of the nuclear reactor. It most certainly did, Java Man. It was frightening. But because of that fright, I can just imagine what those people are going through in Syria and in Turkey. And it's interesting because on Reddit, on some of the subs I'm on, we've had people pop up that are in Turkey and or Syria that are talking about this. And we're talking to them about it. And it's real. They're not allowing people to go back in their homes. Their people are living in their car with their animals because they can't go back in their homes. The earthquakes have hit me so hard. Coverage shows how devastating it is to the people of Turkey and Syria. I've shed tears over this. Carolyn, so have I. Particularly, like I said, after having a little taste, a tiny taste of what they are going through, except we didn't have to live in our cars. Our house, the worst thing that happened to our house is I got some earthquake cracks. Back half of the house upstairs. That was it. And we fixed those. What does earthquake expert KJ said? The Spanish language degree is all powerful. I don't think she's addressed this at all. Somebody was talking about that, and we were kind of laughing and giggling that her subs probably think turkey is the bird you have at Thanksgiving. They probably don't even know where Turkey is. I've been to Turkey. It's a beautiful place. There's a lot of strange things to see and do there. And I had to laugh because when we lived in Europe, the Stars and Stripes newspaper released, well, had an article in about if you visit Turkey or you go to the military base there or you're stationed there, don't ever pick up beautiful hitchhikers because they will beat you up and take your car. So they had beautiful women that were going out and hitchhiking and stealing the soldiers' car. It's kind of sick but funny too. I've been to Turkey too. They haggle over everything. Yes. I was haggling in the market. That's one of the things that I loved about Turkey and about the Middle East is I loved the souks and the markets. Oh, and I don't mind haggling. I know thousands of buildings have collapsed. How awful, how terrifying for them. Caroline, I just can't even imagine. And some of the people with cats and dogs were talking about what their animals were going through. And this morning I saw a really disturbing video of birds, how they were acting right before the earthquakes hit. Animals can sense these things. I am convinced of it. And we were talking about this when the Culpeper earthquake hit. There were a number of us that got very sick to our stomachs right before it happened. and during a lot of the aftershocks. So I cannot. The hitchhikers, yes. The honeypot, you're exactly right. So I can't imagine, because I'm looking at pictures and they're showing block after block after block of buildings that have collapsed or in the portions or in the process of collapsing. That's why you have people living in their cars right now, because they've been told they can't go back into their homes until it's checked to see if it's structurally sound. And those are the ones that are still standing. And remember, it is winter in that part of the world. I saw a fair amount of places where they have snow on the ground, and people are not they don't have a safe place to live. It is just incredibly heartbreaking what I'm seeing. And I'm afraid for Syria. Well, okay, let me back up. Turkey has the Red Cross, the Red Crescent there already. They have Doctors Without Borders. They have all these different, really wonderful organizations there. Save the Children, um, even Catholic Ministries is there. So they have a lot of help on the ground there, who are now setting up, supply lines and helping where they can. But Syria is a little bit more problematic because of the ongoing civil conflict there. Their leader Assad has still not managed to reign peace in his entire country or come to any kind of agreement with certain parts of the country. And my understanding is some of the most damaged parts of Syria are some of the rebel held areas. So there's some real concern that Syria is not going to get the same amount of help that Turkey will. He is the only person to have survived 2 nuclear bombs. Yeah. One Japanese person was on a business trip to Hiroshima. Oh my gosh, that's crazy. So I don't know where we go from here, because the people of Syria, they deserve help too. And and the conflict in Syria it's a complex thing brought on by a pile of things. A 10-year drought, the crop failures, religious violence, all sorts of things go into what's going on in Syria, what has been going on. And we've seen some really tragic type stories emerge from there of people trying to flee on little rubber dinghies and things to Europe. I see these things and it makes me fear for our world. And I'm just afraid those poor people are not going to get help. They're not going to get help. And there was an article this morning on CNN. So I want to encourage you, if you feel at all led to help out or to give. Okay, so I know the Red Cross, Red Crescent takes a lot of crap about their administrative costs, and they do have some very high administrative costs. But just like with the war in Ukraine, they're on the ground. They're on the ground, boots on the ground, doing stuff right now. So I'm giving to Doctors Without Borders because they're one of my favorite organizations. They don't care about violence. They don't care about fighting and factions. They just go in there and do the stuff they're supposed to do to help people. So I'm going to be giving to them and a few other organizations as well. CNN has a page up right now of organizations, and they also have an all-purpose fund you can give to, where it is divided between these different organizations, and they list the names of each place so you can decide. But it is such a don't donate to it is such an awful thing there that they really need the help. So I would urge you to give. Whatever you do, don't donate to a Without a Crystal Ball fundraiser for such. Donate directly. Exactly. Because she's going to be taking a cut or the whole thing. Allegedly. My opinion. Okay, so we have to get to the other part of today, which I don't even like mentioning, but I feel like I have to. Yesterday, when I was on my live stream, growing up mostly in California, I felt a number of earthquakes, but I was never close to a serious epicenter. Bob from Cheap RV Living spoke of being a kid in Alaska in 1964, 9.2. Oh my goodness, that's scary. I know how frightening it was for the one we had in Virginia, being 30 miles away from the epicenter and it being like a 6.0, something like that, or 5.9. It was bad. It was so strange. I was up in my house. I was upstairs because we had a beautiful Cape Cod little cottage there. I'm up in there. I'm writing. I was actually writing for NOQ when it hit. I was writing for No Longer Quivering. So I'm up in my little office area in the dormer of the Cape Cod. Okay. So I'm up there writing, and all of a sudden this thumping happens. And I'm like, GD, it's the washer is unbalanced. And then it got a lot worse. And I was like, so I'm running, my kids are screaming, my son and his friend are screaming, come downstairs, it's an earthquake, it's an earthquake. So I'm running down the stairs. Oh, thank you, Archie. So I'm running down the stairs screaming myself. The cats are running outside. We're all outside shaking, and it's still shaking. And you can see the grass looks like it's rippling, like it's a wave. And my cell phone goes off at the same time, and it's my daughter screaming, Mom, Mom, something's wrong with the car. It's like, nothing's wrong with the car. It's an earthquake. And then we lost connection. So at the end of it, my neighbors, my cats, their cats and dogs were all standing in the street looking at each other like, was that an earthquake? So I could just imagine. Like I said, I can just imagine what it would be like to be in a bad one after that. I mean, that was bad enough. I don't really want to be in a bad one. There are little earthquakes here all the time. We've not had any major ones since I've been here. Knock on Guanacaste wood. So I want to talk a little bit about the 7M lawsuit, just a little bit. It broke yesterday while I was here whining about how greasy and sandy I was and sunburned. And then I had to get in the shower. It broke that what the judge had ruled on. Yeah, Java man, you're probably right. Vacuum cleaners scare the dickens out of cats and dogs. So someone came in and told me about it. I think it was it Utola reading? And I smiled and said, I'm going to pop the bubbly because we'd been waiting on this. Last night, I finally had time to sit down and read all of it, look through it. There's some big takeaways. I just want to cover just one or two. First of all, the judge denied Katie Joy's request to compel discovery. When? On the flip side, 7M is able to protect their discovery. There's a protection order in place over anything that's like a medical record, a financial record, anything like that is lawyers only. In other words, she can't get her greedy mitts on it and then blast it out over her various social media. So that's a win for them as far as I'm concerned. Now, the judge did go ahead and deny deny ending the lawsuit when 7M said, hey, they missed a deadline, we want judgment. They denied that. And I think that was probably the correct thing to do, because if they had gone ahead and let it go, you know that she would have filed to overturn the whole damn mess and been crying and going, I didn't have time. I didn't know I missed a deadline. So it's probably wiser to err on the side of caution and to not allow the judgment. The other thing that is celebrating this as a win, whistling past the graveyard. I saw that, Java man, and for the life of me, what the hell is she doing? She's blasting 7M again. Last night we saw a whole spate of things she put out and then immediately deleted. They were just outrageous. I don't get that. Someone sues you, do like Tati Westbrook and just Ferme LaBouche. Shut your mouth. That's the only thing that I can say and see. I cannot for the life of me understand blasting that stuff out. So they didn't compel KJ to fermer la bouche. They did not rule that she had to shut her mouth, which I was really surprised at that too. But all I could say about the stuff she's doing is she's digging herself in deeper and deeper and deeper. And everything, yeah, they were saved and they have them. I'm going to say that. All the things she said last night were saved and sent to 7M, is my understanding. If you can't shut up when all this is going on around you, what? I'm just outraged because I just can't imagine. I can't imagine. Why would you do that? Why would you not just shut your mouth? I don't get it. I guess I'm getting too old. I've talked about this before. I feel so totally out of step with the country and with people's general thoughts. Like I was talking about the Gabby Petito thing and Gabby on Love After Lockup, the two Gabbys. In the bad old days, domestic violence was not prosecuted. It wasn't even considered a crime most of the time, and the woman had to really pursue it to get it to go to jail, to even get an arrest. Most of the time, the cops were like, "Oh, well, you shouldn't have provoked him." That's changed a lot. Obviously, the Tale of the Two Gabby shows needs to change a lot more because passing the laws against it are not enough if the cops don't enforce it. But that's just my old ass ranting about stuff that I don't understand why it's even still a thing. So, yes, Katie Joy, keep running your mouth. People will keep screen capping it, and then we'll keep sending it to Robert Shin and 7M. Right now, she's trying to justify everything she's saying and doing by saying, oh, well, they're public figures, so I can say what I want. And she's trying to say that the defamation has to prove that she has been malicious. I don't think that's going to be a problem. I don't think that's going to be a problem at all because she has been quite malicious in everything she's done to them. But here's where it gets interesting to me is James and Miranda Derrick were at the Grammys the other night in a limo, dressed all fancy, invited to the Grammys. And even though she commented on, picked on them and made fun of them about it, that has to be burning her biscuits in the worst way possible. And her claiming that Robert Shin is a public figure is a big pile of codswallop. He is no public figure. He's a pastor. He was the guy running 7M Management, which is now out of business. And I suspect they're going to play that out in the courtroom too, because it looks like she killed his business. And I think the thing that is going to kill her is this tortious interference thing, because she's claiming now that she never told anybody or she never contacted anybody about 7M, that she never did anything to cause them to lose a contract. Au contraire, my frere, we remember all your postings. And it's my understanding 7M has them too, showing all the times she said, well, yes, I called this and did that. The judge called her a journalistic outlet. I wonder if that is a discount journalist, like an outlet store. That could well be, because they're not going to call him a journalist because she's clearly not a journalist. She's not studied journalism. Hell, we couldn't even get her to open the best practices manual, which outlined journalistic integrity at Pathos. And she just really leans into that. It's just the funniest thing of all times that she still makes the claim that she's a journalist. She's no journalist. She's no journalist any more than I'm a famous fashion designer. I mean, it's just not even possible. It sounds like the ethics manual at Enron. Yes, they had one. I'm sure they did. Every stupid organization has one. And it's ridiculous because many places they just throw that thing out and nobody follows it. I remember taking a temporary job for just a very short period of time with a company in Middle Virginia where I live. Well, the Virginia Piedmont is a better way to term it. that was a British firm that came in to do business in the US and hired a bunch of us temps to help set them up and get them running and stuff. And they had their rules posted on the board. And at one point, I pointed out to the guy running the joint, I said, you know, many of these things are illegal here. You can't say X, Y, or Z. You can't do those things. You need to check with the Department of Labor in the state of Virginia to see what the actual rules are on this stuff. And so it was all the stuff that was just utterly absurdist. And it's been my experience that organizations ignore that crap anyway. So why is it even there? But the thing with journalism and journalists is you have to be able to prove you have some journalistic integrity. Those that don't get quickly found out, exposed, and kicked to the curb. So if I were her, I would not be trotting around saying that I'm a journalist. There's just a problem with all this, though. The internet has given people an outlet like never before. With the internet and COVID and everything else, work has shifted so much. Terms have shifted. Word meanings have shifted. So many things have shifted that I think we're kind of in a series of flux right now where nothing is really settled and anything could go. At least she isn't a frauditor. Those are the worst. Yep. Hey, Java Man, did you see that Michelle came back last night? She went back live on her channel. She didn't cuss. Well, not more than a few words. She didn't dox anyone. She admitted she doxed 3 people. That I couldn't get over. It was like, why would you admit that? She apologized, supposedly. I mean, I saw that and I was kind of rolling my eyes because if I were to have several YouTube channels permanently taken away from me, that's how I would try to get back. I would say all the right things and try to get back. So yesterday was her saying all the right things after like 3 weeks of being a guest panelist on everybody else's channels, cursing, carrying on, issuing threats, the whole 9 yards. Perhaps she fell off the mule on the road to Damascus. Yeah, well, I'm not holding my breath. I didn't bother to comment. Others told me they only went in for 10 minutes. I went in for 30, but like I said, I was raised Catholic, so I'm familiar with self-flagellation. So that was strictly a torturous thing for me because her voice just rubs my nerves completely raw. And the things she says, and I was just busting out laughing a number of times last night. I was like, yeah. But 30 minutes was all I could take. Oh, thank you, Marmaduke. I'm feeling healthy. I'm struggling with my blood sugar, but the metformin is doing too good of a job. So I'm slowly stepping down from that, and we're figuring out what to do. But that's been quite the adventure on top of the asthma. And I don't like cutting back on the metformin because it helps with the asthma. So there you go. So I don't know what kind of mule she's fell off of. She seemed higher than a helicopter full of hippies last night. She seemed higher than I was the other night when I doubled my edible dose because I wasn't getting any relief. It is. I say it's the miracle drug. As long as you don't live on cupcakes and fudge, you're going to be fine. Just eat normally and take your metformin, and it will resolve just about anything. The problem I'm having is it lowers my blood sugar too far, and then I go into the, oh my God, I got to eat the refrigerator mode. And if I try not to do that, after try just to nibble, then what happens? My body dumps sugar, and I got a high reading. So it's kind of crazy the way the blood sugars work. And I'm not real fond of that, but I'm old. This stuff happens. When you get old, your blood pressure goes up, your blood sugar goes up. If KJ is going to be falling off, I wonder if KJ is going to be falling for the mule moment. Java Man, I think she had a White Claw moment last night, everybody was saying, because some of the things she was saying and doing and posting, it sure seemed like maybe she wasn't 100% in her right faculties. My understanding is they have not announced a date for the trial. I'm hoping they do. I'm hoping that I can go. I would like to go watch the spectacle in real life. But it is a constant bouncing act, Marmaduke. But here's the thing, Minnesota, if the trial is in fall, winter, chances are I won't go because I've developed such super thin blood again that it's like you put me in 70-degree weather and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm freezing. My recent trip to Louisiana, I was dressed like Nanook of the North. My aunt's like, why are you wearing a puffer jacket over a sweater, over a long sleeve shirt? Because I'm so cold, I can't stand it. Marmaduke, the two Gabbys, I was talking about Gabby Petito. Her family released a high-res image from her cell phone. She took a picture of herself, documenting beginnings of a black eye, some damage on her nose, and blood on her face. That is the Gabby that law enforcement saw and failed to protect. And the other Gabby is a gal that's on Love After Lockup. Her ex-con boyfriend beat her so severely he fractured her orbital socket. And yet, for both girls, I'm seeing people come forward going, well, she brought it on herself. She slapped him first, blah, 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 blah. There is never an excuse for violence. And like I said, unless we get a hold of this thing in the U.S. and have law enforcement enforce the laws that are actually in place for these things, we're never going to see anything change unless they actually enforce the laws. At least there are laws now, because I remember back in the bad old days, I had a girlfriend, his husband would tune her up on the regular. And law enforcement was just next to useless with her. Fortunately for her, she got away. She didn't die leaving him. What happened is he started fighting with the biker next door, the guy did. Over this issue, he was tuning up his wife. And the biker shot him right between the eyes, killed him. And my friend escaped. That was a whole other story. It was a short period of time. I lived in a mobile home community, and everything under the sun went wrong there. You can imagine. I saw more domestic violence and things, but it was during my starving student days, and it was eye-opening for me. So that's the story of the two Gabbys. We got to start taking this stuff seriously. We got to insist that law enforcement picks up the right person. Hell, even if they'd have picked up Gabby and taken her in on her own admission that she had slapped or hit Brian first, she might still be alive. That might have been enough for her to call her family and say, hey, look. Yeah, they sided with him, Marmaduke. It is disgusting. Travel Man, I discovered that. Even though I'm going to say this, I know some very precious retirees that live there who are the finest of folks. And I think it's a shame that you seem to have some very high caliber people and you seem to have the wreck of the Hesperus kind of people that are just down there and you're like, why are you doing this? So, and the biker needed to go to jail for shooting the guy between the eyes because he had been suspected of a pile of stuff, including things like shooting out his ex-wife's windows, slashing her car tires. He was not a nice guy. And yeah. So I don't care if you're living with a felon, what the deal is. Domestic violence is just should never be acceptable. When they were redoing the governor's mansion in Arkansas, they put Governor Mike Huckabee in a triple wide. Hey, whatever works, it's a home. Like I said, I have nothing against mobile homes, but manufactured housing. It's some of the communities of the people that are in them that I have the problem with. We have a gated community here, which has the highest rates of mostly between neighbors. Rich people fight too. Mark, I have stories about that here too. We live in a weird little triangular shaped neighborhood. It's enclosed with gates, okay? And it's not American though. I think there's one other American couple that lives here, but it's not a gated community for zillionaires. They have those all over the place here. There's one in Pinellas. There's one, Pinellas. There's one over in Avellanas, which is over by the Marriott. I think they actually run it. And you see some crazy crap going down with the gringos in this part of the world, the rich ones. And I'm not looking forward to Friday because Friday, I'm going to bingo with the Richies. And part of me absolutely hates it. I'm not a bingo player. It's kind of like, why are we doing this again? This is fun. Because I don't happen to think sitting there listening to somebody chatter out numbers and letters is an amusing thing. But my husband loves it. And number two, we're sitting there with rich entitled gringos. Number three, I hate the restaurant they choose because they put gorgonzola on everything. And I've discovered I'm very allergic to gorgonzola. If I eat anything with gorgonzola and it's on every dish there, I end up sick for a week. So we see crazy things happening through there. We hear stories. So we see crazy things happening through there. We hear stories about stuff like that. Do they? Java man, they sure didn't where I live, but I did hear a lot about cow tipping from some of the young people. And one of the people I worked with was trying to get a come here. What's what they used to call people that moved to Culpeper like we did, come here's, to go on a snipe hunt. Look that one up. Snipe hunting, which is silly, but how do you know if you're not raising? I was thinking about this the other day. When I was a kid growing up, my father sometimes would like to drive us around the LSU lakes. It was beautiful at night and during the day, whenever. It's as large, and I suspect they're man-made lakes off campus, of course. And there's all these mansions and beautiful things all over the lakes. Who's hitting me up here? My father used to like to drive us around, and it was pretty crazy because he tried his darndest a couple of times. He tried his darndest with mother, but a couple of times he threatened to kill us there. One time he drove the cart into the lake. He was so frustrated and upset, and we're sitting there in 2 feet of water going, really? Really? This is how you planned on being a family annihilator? But that wasn't the point. The point is I was so innocent and stupid in those days that when I started going on my first few dates at 15, I went out with, well, at some point I went out with my ex, and he took me to the LSU lakes to go parking and I said, what are we going to go do? He says, we're going to go watch the submarine races. Well, this is 1975. I didn't know any better. I jumped out of the car. We got there and ran to the edge of the lake looking down going, where's the submarines? How are we going to see them? Do they have lights on them? I had all these reasons. I mean, these scenarios in my head about the submarine races and trying to figure out how they were going to race those submarines. It was definitely a different time back then. But my ex teased me about those stupid submarine races forever. He's probably still telling his wife number 6 about, you'll never believe wife number 1 really believed there were submarine races and ran to go see them. My Aunt Jen loved bingo and played 12 cards at a time, never got the appeal. Tala, my husband loves it. I don't get it. I don't get it at all. I guess because when I was a kid, we played oodles of those sort of things, including bingo. And I'm just like, no. And I know people love it. I know these big bingo parlors that people make all kinds of, that's fine. If that's how it floats your boat, more power to you. Go on and do it. Just don't make me sit there with you while you're doing it. That's what's so comical about this whole thing. My husband loves it. One time we were at a resort and he went and played bingo everything. And it's like, look at all this candy I won. How much did your cards cost you? You know, you just spent more to win that candy than you would have if you'd walked down to the Winn-Dixie and bought it. But for him, I think it's a social aspect. He's a social animal. I am not. I am very content on my own. And I like to people watch. So it is good for that. It's good for people watching and watching millionaires saying stupid stuff and getting to hear all the latest piles of dumbness that has gone down in the community. I get to sit with the guy who tore out his swimming pool a bunch of times and told me my live streams are boring. He built a fancy house, decided afterwards he didn't like the brand new swimming pool, so he made him tear it out and start again. It's about $60,000 every time you replace a swimming pool here. Rumor has it there are many bodies buried in the mountains here. Maybe cow patties are preferable. That might be. You know, Marmaduke, I don't know if you, what's that guy's name? Marion was the first name. He had a CULT that had been in Florida and all these different places and ended up in Culpeper. He bought the old movie theater that was part of the chain I once worked for. And it was one of the craziest things I've ever seen happen. He tore out all the seats. And I don't know what the CULT was doing there, but they were doing weird stuff. It was rumored that they had property in Madison County, Virginia, which is extremely rural and mountainous in places, and that they had buried the bodies of children there. And at one point, law enforcement showed up and dug it up looking for bodies, and they didn't find anything. Of course, it's dumb rumors. Culpeper gossiped, but Culpeper did not gossip like Madison. Madison people gossip on steroids. I worked for a while in Madison County for a woman who her entire entertainment was listening to a police scanner. And not because she was waiting for something to go down, she was waiting to hear about something. It's because it was her entertainment. She was kind of a strange one. One of the craziest stories that happened with her, she owned an insurance agency in Madison. And her father was a big wig in the county and the state, so she thought nothing she did was ever wrong. She drank a lot. She was always trying to get me to drink with her. And at the time, I was going to church at this place that was so restrictive, this Quiverful. So every time she tried to get me to go to the country club and drink with her, and be like, no. But what's funny about her, Java Man, I'm sure in Madison, they're still listening to it, was one day she came to me and she says, I've got this wonderful idea, because a tornado had come through the country club and it destroyed the women's locker room, the building that was in, the little building. And the country club did not have the money to rebuild the stupid thing. So at that time, so there's no women's locker room for a while. And I said, okay, what's your idea? Knowing it would likely be dumb, because I'd been working with this woman for a while and her brain was, she said she had watched this movie in her office, because she was always watching movies when I was there. I was in there working and she was in the other room watching movies. She had watched this movie called Calendar Girls. And if you're not familiar with the story, it's about a group of ladies in Great Britain that pose nude, ladies of a certain age that pose nude on a calendar to raise money for cancer, for cancer treatments and awareness and all of that for cancer charity. And it's a cute little movie. It's got a good message. It's a true film, as true as these movies are when they remake true stories. And so she says, that's what we're going to do. We're all going to pose naked on the golf course and sell the calendar. to my semi-quiverful mind at the time, I was like, now we have reached the nadir of hell. So I tried everything in my power to talk this woman out of doing this. And she just would not be dissuaded. So I watched this play out over months and months and months and months. Her friends agreed to do it. Everybody else was losing their damn mind. It's part of the board for the country club. All the women, many of the women, it split about a quarter of the women went along with it. The other 2/3 or 3/4, whatever, said, oh, hell no. And my big concern, I kept telling her, is like, the minute that you sell that first calendar, one of these local chuckleheads is going to get a copy of it, is going to make copies, and they're going to be all over town, your naked body. So she wouldn't listen to me at all about this and went ahead with it. And they posed naked on the golf course, not revealing anything, like calendar girls standing like this or whatever, even though I don't think you could hide much behind a golf club. Maybe they are holding the golf bag like this. Who knows? But because I would not even look at it, because like, I am not defrauding my eyes by looking at this thing. Well, that's exactly what happened. That's exactly what happened. She sold these things. And the same day, some wag made copies of it and distributed it to the local rural recondites who were having themselves one hell of a blast with her nude pictures. So there you go. That's why you shouldn't be posing naked in rural areas, because it will go around. Somebody will have that nude picture of you. And this was the days before Photoshop was commonly used too. So I am not sure exactly what happened. Now, I haven't kept track of her. She fired me, but that was okay, because the day that she fired me, I'd come in there to quit. She was upset with me because I had said something to somebody at my church about, I have to quit this job. This woman is nuts. And because it's Madison, it got back to her. So between the drinking and everything else, it was like, I can't be here any longer. Now I look back at her and I'm kind of amused by all her antics, because they were all kind of funny. And she just did not have an ounce of self-awareness. It was the funniest thing you'd ever seen. And she thought because she had money, she could do whatever the hell she damn well pleased. Well, guess what? It doesn't work out that way. It doesn't always work out that way. And I see that here too. I got to tell you guys some of the crazy stories here. One time I witnessed tourists telling off a hotel guy because it's the same time of the year that it is now, which is the trade winds are coming through, the papagayos, and it whips the sand around. It feels like you're getting sandblasted on the beach on when you do a beach walk, when the papagayos are blowing hard. So this woman was telling the hotel staff she expected them to do something about the wind. The wind! Without an ounce of self-awareness. That would be a great channel name. Yeah, it would be for her. Her and this lady had a lot in common. A lot in common. Except this woman had a whole pile of ex-husbands. In fact, that was the thing that pissed her off and turned her against me, is she accused me of looking at porn on one of the company computers. Well, I was able to pull up the entire history and show her that when porn was accessed on the computer, it was on my days off. It was when her husband was sitting behind my desk doing whatever with computers. So I showed her through the history that it was her husband doing it. And it was not nice stuff. It was just the nastiest crap. It was the kind of stuff that Josh Duggar would love before he started looking at little kids. Yeah. So that was another reason Lee's just like, oh my gosh, I'm a good woman of God, and these people are provoking me at every single turn. Provoking me. I don't know, Java Man, because I didn't look at that stuff at that time. Now I'm kind of like, whatever. But at those days, it was like, this is the devil coming against me. Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and leave you guys. It's been an hour, and I don't know that I have an hour of anything to talk about. That's why I'm rambling about crazy stuff now, I guess. Yeah, I'm going to have to look up this one now. I want to see what happened to her after the nude calendar fiasco and everything else, and if the alcohol ever caught up with her. Okay, you guys, I'm going to go. Have a great day. I'm just going to go ahead and, yeah, I can't either. My favorite one was the congressman that recorded an ad and had two browser. Yes, 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 yes. That's always funny when people do that crap to themselves, shoot themselves in the foot. I'll see you guys later. Thanks for watching.